The purpose is what we're doing right now. It's having this conversation. It's giving people hope. It's helping people see that they're much more valuable than they really think that they are. Value and purpose.
Dale R. Marks, the executive director of the 96th Test Wing at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. Dale leads over 10,000 personnel in one of the most critical operations in the Air Force. He oversees cutting-edge testing and evaluation while ensuring the smooth functioning of the largest installation in the Air Force.
So everything that you see in here is really tied to, it's a part of the journey that I can look back on and go like, I can tell you what I was doing there, why I was there, how I got there.
From growing up under the influence of his great uncle, a World War II prisoner of war, and his father, a NASA rocket scientist, to navigate the challenges of 15 deployments as a fighter pilot, Dale's life is a testament to resilience and leadership.
And everything I'm going to touch, I could give less and probably get by. But that's not the way I want to live.
We'll explore the traumatic IED explosion in Iraq that changed his life forever, how he overcame chronic pain and personal struggles, and how these experiences shaped his leadership philosophy centered on value, purpose, and perspective.
Well, I had walked around with a broken neck and a broken back for probably 4 years.
How did you even do that?
It's...
Oh my God.
Bumping the lap sends a level of excellence that says, look, today when I do this, it's not just to kind of throw the paper across the desk and say I'm done. It's, I'm going to hand it to you in a way with kindness and say, I did my very best to give this to you.
In this episode, Dale shares the concept of bumping the lamp, the power of small acts of excellence, and the lessons he's learned about building a community and supporting others through life's darkest moments.
You have to look at that and go, and there's a motivation in there to go like, I get one shot at this maybe, to have an interaction. And if my goal is I can make your day a little bit better as we're doing what are really, really hard things that we deal with here. We don't get any easy problems at all.
If you've ever wondered how to turn your pain into purpose, or how small gestures can make a monumental difference, then this episode is for you. What's up, Josh here, and I got a quick update for you before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time because there's two things that I just have to say to you. And the first is just a tremendous thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to us, and it really is a dream come true to not only be sharing the incredible stories of these guests, but to then inspire so many of you listeners. It has become my life's purpose, and I cannot thank you enough for supporting me and so many others on this journey of positivity. But secondly, it's a dream where I feel like we are just getting started and the sky is the limit. I am so excited to see where this goes, and I'm so blessed to have you on this journey. And if you appreciate this message, if you appreciate what we do here at the Hero Front Podcast, please follow us on this app. Hit subscribe. Now, if you do that, here's the promise that I'm going to make to you. I am going to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I possibly can now and going forward. We're going to deliver the guests that you want me to speak to. We're going to have the topics that you want to hear about. And of course, we're going to keep doing all the things that you've always loved about the podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now let's get back to the show and let's get after it.
It's good.
So I'm going to start this off a little bit different. I had some time to walk around your office here.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you some observations I made. And I want you to let me know if any of them are just straight up wrong.
Yeah, no, go.
Okay, so here's what I learned about you in your office tour today. So you appreciate history and tradition. You love your family. You're thankful to be here today. You love flying, aircraft, all things pilot. You're a true patriot. You love this country. You want to see it succeed. And you've never forgotten about 9/11. And, and I'm in the same boat where that kind of fuels us to this day.
Mm-hmm.
You appreciate humor and you value the ability to sometimes laugh at yourself or the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You're fascinated by space and potential space capabilities. Near-peer adversaries and our future are on your heart and mind as you navigate your day-to-day. You stay very organized. You're methodical in your tasks. You understand that people are very complex, but you stay open-minded. You hear all sides of different stories and different opinions, but at your core, you like to take care of people because you know they'll take care of the mission. You like cool hats, and you appreciate a good first impression. Mm-hmm. That's everything I have deduced in your office.
Wow. Okay, that's the entire podcast. Thanks for coming. Thank you for joining my TED Talk.
Right.
No, that is honestly, no one's ever done that, but that says a lot. No, and that really does say a lot about who I am. Now, there's one you missed.
Okay, what's that?
But it relates. So over the top, you're going to see a folded flag and a Purple Heart.
I saw that.
And that the reason I want to kind of go to that first off is if you put all of that together. Growing up as a child, so my grandparents died really early. I didn't know my grandparents very well. Okay. But my great uncle, who became really my grandfather for my aunt and uncle, became my grandparents. As a child, growing up, I just knew this gentleman who was the kindest soul I'd ever met in my life, was always doting us. They never had kids. And it wasn't until later in life that I came to understand that he had been taken prisoner in World War II. Wow. He was captured. The story basically goes he was an advanced recon party, had crossed a river in northern Italy fighting the Germans, ended up trying to hide. The Germans came into town and ended up they made their headquarters in the house that they were seeking to hide. And about 3 days later got captured, and he got marched back to Germany, frostbite, horrible stories. It wasn't until the end of his life that I ever even knew the stories as I started to enter the military. But this was a guy who taught me what it meant to take care of people, what it meant to be a patriot when I didn't quite understand what that word meant. And I grew up in a family where my dad, who is my hero, is a literal rocket scientist. So my dad was a pilot, worked for NASA. So as a kid growing up, I had the coolest childhood of anybody I know, which is I grew up around astronauts and astronauts' families. We'd go to picnics and hang out with the Glens and the Shepherds and the Armstrongs. And I was a kid. What do I know?
I mean, the closest thing I had to that as a kid was the space camp on Nickelodeon commercials.
Yeah, right. So when we see space, and my dad's project was the lunar lander engine. And I mean, I even remember as a kid, the phone call when Apollo 13 blew up and all these other things that happened, right? And so when you grow up in a family and Dad was Air Force as well, and so when you grow up in that world, it's about family, it's about the closeness of family, it's about taking care of each other. And so as far as I can remember back, love of this country, service to our country, these are just family traits. This is who we are. And so my journey then went through college off to the Air Force to pilot training and those kinds of things. But what you see collected is really the history of all of that. And every one of those things that you see and that you talked about have a very specific meaning in the journey. And it really is a journey. I don't know, Josh, if you ever thought about this. Most people are either journey people or destination people. Right. And
Absolutely.
so many of us are taught early on that I got to get to the destination. And so everything that we are about is to get to the destination. The problem sometimes with that viewpoint, and I know tons of destination people, they are high achievers. But when they get there, they're disappointed by what they arrived at. Because when they start to look back on their life, what they realize is they left a lot of the journey out.
Right.
And early on in all of that, because of the way I was raised, it was so much more about the journey and being present in the moment of where you are in that journey going forward and the people that are important in that journey, that change. So everything that you see in here is really tied to, it's a part of the journey that I can look back on and go like, I can tell you what I was doing there, why I was there, how I got there. Not because I'm sentimental in that sense of holding these things, but it's like you started with, it's the stories that sit behind every single one of those.
Yes, and I really love people's offices because everything you set out here is intentional.
Very, very much so.
Right? It's not like random miscellaneous things just appeared from your life. Like you intentionally picked everything in here. And I love, looking through it. A few questions I had. Well, one was Dale Lee. which
that's
there,
him. Yep,
the
that's
flag,
the man.
Purple Heart. So
who I'm named for.
Yes, and you answer that, and wow, what an incredible hero to just have in your life. And we have a lot in common, whereas my dad is my hero. He was an airman. My uncle Bob was the Vietnam veteran.
There you go.
He taught me, I was that hyperactive Dennis the Menace type, and people had very limited patience with that. But my uncle Bob, as strict as he was, he would always find time to mentor me, and he was the most patient with me out of everyone I've ever met.
Yeah.
And so, we both definitely have that in common. So a few questions before, we hear a little bit more about you. Is you have a book called Nobody Listens to Andrew.
My favorite book.
What's the deal with that?
It is a 1960s first grade reader. Okay. Along the way, there's a lot of things that I have been very fortunate to do, but many years ago, it started to become apparent where I'd gotten a lot into study academics strategy and what I was hired to do. So, for example, one of my jobs in the past has been I was the director of the National Operations Center. And I tell you, it's the only job I've ever held where they paid me to be paranoid every day. And the White House was my customer. And the idea was this, simply to look out strategically and say, okay, those things don't all go together. Why is that starting to happen? So, for example, one day I was watching the district, and I had a truck turnover on one part of the Beltway. I had the Eisenhower Tunnel get blocked by another truck, and then there was a truck overturned on the 495-95 South interchange. And so basically the entire Beltway just shut down. At once.
That's a red flag.
And went, okay, where's the president? Right. So I tell people, and you say, well, what does that have to do with this book? Well, a lot of the work that I do was, okay, these things are happening. I would lay it down, and people would go like, yeah, they would dismiss, because they would often look at the things I was doing and say, have you thought about these things? These things that you don't think go together, that everybody else was dismissing, I was tying together back into this and applying it. And so the joke became, well, nobody's listening to Andrew. And that's really what that book is all about, is Andrew's correct the entire time, and nobody listened to him until the very end. So
wow, I love that.
A lot of times I'll walk over and go like, here's where we are today. I'm just telling you. So I know.
That's how it feels being public health. I'm a public health medic. It's a very similar approach there. Okay, another question on your office. You have Roger Rabbit. You have, and it says bump the lamp. I don't specifically remember that scene.
Yeah.
So what's that all about?
Oh, this is great. This is one of my, so this is a life philosophy. So much of what we have, we often think about things that we have to do and how we go about doing them. And in my world, the way I see it is I get to do things. And the idea here, if you remember this scene in Roger Rabbit, first movie in which you put live and cartoon together, which 35 years ago was cutting edge kind of things. Today we don't even think about it.
It still looks really good even today.
It is. It's a great film. But what's so important about that scene was they were at the tail end of the movie, and in that scene, they come in and there's a fight back and forth going on, right? They're running around the room, and the lamp gets hit. Well, as the lamp gets hit, remember they're trying to merge real and cartoon together. What the director noticed was there were no shadows on the rabbit.
Oh.
And so here they are. They're about wrapping up the film. They're that much into it. And he tells the cartoon team, he says, okay, I need you to go back, redo that scene. And there needs to be shadows. Bump the lamp. The lamp needs to move so that they can see what's going on with the shadows. And his creative team looks at him and says, do you know what this is going to cost us for 2 minutes of film? He goes, why do we want to do that? He goes, nobody's going to notice. And the director says, I'm going to notice.
Oh,
bump the lamp. And so that phrase, bump the lamp, for us and within my family, is this understanding of there's a lot of things out there that we do. And, one of our core values, of course, in the Air Force is excellence in all we do. And so it's this understanding of bumping the lamp is that I could do it this far and probably satisfy what's going on. But I'm going to go beyond that. I'm going to bump the lamp. Maybe nobody's ever going to notice that. I'm going to pick up that piece of trash. not because I have to, but because I get to. I'm going to go check on that person, not because I have to, because I get to. I want to know what's going on. I want to take the extra step, go the extra mile, if you will. Again, not because I'm trying to prove something. I'm not trying to show off. I don't care if anybody ever notices in the world. In fact, I would care that they don't notice, perhaps. But more importantly, bumping the lap sends a level of excellence that says, look, today when I do this, it's not just to kind of throw the paper across the desk and say I'm done. It's I'm going to hand it to you in a way with kindness and say, I did my very best to give this to you. That's what bump the lamp means.
Wow, I love that. All that from that picture right
That's
there.
it. And that's why it sits there every day is so when I walk in, the reminder is when I walk in the office 100 times a day, it's I have to make a choice, right? The amount of stuff that comes in here every single day is overwhelming, and I have a choice. And everything I'm going to touch, I could give less and probably get by. Mm-hmm. But that's not the way I want to live.
Right. And you know, you're in like a commander role, and what an important role. I mean, you know, with us a little bit lower down the chain, there's always other people we can pass things to, rely on it. Mm-hmm. We're never usually like the end all be all to something, but you are. And that's a lot of pressure. And to, you know, hit it with that kind of tenacity and treat every single situation with the utmost care and importance. You know, I definitely appreciate having you here on Team Eglin.
Thanks. My pleasure.
So we heard a little bit about you know, your upbringing, who you were surrounded by. I was hoping we could kind of get into why you joined, and then some of the stories throughout your career. Yeah. So, as I said, when you grow up in a family in which there's lots of machinery, space stuff, airplanes, I joke today. So again, my weird childhood. We lived 3 blocks from an airport. And I used to go down and wash airplanes for rides. Oh, wow. Now, so you got to imagine today you're saying this out loud. So, you know, that long ago going like, I washed the airplane. Mom would go, what'd you do today? And I go, well, I was down at the airport. I washed an airplane, got a ride from this guy. Do you know who he was? No, I just some dude. Got in his plane, we flew around, and then I landed and got on my bike and came home. Yeah, we'd never do that today. But most kids are not getting in airplanes. Yeah, well, that's true. Parents don't let your kids do that. But no, it was such a great life, right? And so going to fly and flying, you know, so I started flying airplanes with my dad as early as I can remember, and that was always the dream. I want to go be a pilot. I want to be a fighter pilot. And I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to go do that. Went through ROTC and was able to go do that. And it has been a pretty interesting career. I loved every minute of it. People used to ask me, why fighters? And I would often answer, I said, because I get to go upside down. And they go, really? Yeah. I go, because it's, and they go, well, why? I go, because I can. Right. You know, because when you're flying big airplanes and you spill the drinks, they don't like that. So, you know, that's why. That's anyway. Amazing. And, you know, when I was joining the Air Force, when I decided to join, of course, my dad, he did 26 years. So, you know, he was happy about it. And I remember him, you know, trying to help me figure out, like, what career, what am I interested in? It's just stuff I hadn't thought about. You know, I was kind of a goofball. And I remember just being, you know, kind of just on the fly, like, yeah, I guess I'll just, you know, fly jets or something. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe I can just go do that. And my dad usually doesn't tell me I can't do something, but he did caution me with that. He said, son, the people that are doing that have wanted to do that since they could walk. Yeah. They don't just decide right before they join. Just letting you know. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the most real and true things that truth bombs he's ever dropped on me. Because then as I met the pilots, you know, it's a lifelong dream. Yeah, like it's literally the greatest thing to them. And how special to have found that so young. Yeah, you know, it's amazing. Yeah, it's good. So yes, you want to be this pilot. You know, you have these huge dreams, these huge goals. You've got the right leaders in your life, and that all leads to. Yeah, so bunch of different deployments. So I've deployed 15 times. Oh wow! In my career did 25 years. The other part of that came back from Desert Storm, went into ground control and ended up being a ground controller as well, a JTAC. And I tell people I spent probably half my career pushing mud with the Army. And I married Army, so I figured I married up anyway. But no, the career was
pretty great. It was hard, a lot of combat deployments. I've been to a lot of places that I won't ever be able to talk about, but doing very, very interesting things. But I think, you mentioned, and just to kind of fast forward a little bit to 9/11. So 9/11 became important for a couple of reasons to us. One is I have 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys. My 2 boys both have special needs. One was injured at birth and had multiple surgeries. He had to have nerves pulled out of spinal column, lost use of his arm. So we pursued a lot of surgeries. And so what with him and my youngest is autistic. With my older son, really what God began to show us was this idea of how you make choices for your family. Right. So there's this love of country, but the love of family was so strong. And so now I'm strategically picking assignments and doing things that are going to take care of my son. I get an assignment to DC through a lot of reasons that I won't go into right now, but very specifically because my son needed a very specific hand surgery, and the best surgeon in the world happened to be there in Baltimore. Wow. And so we said, well, let's take a Pentagon job. And so on this very crisp, cool September morning, in Washington, D.C. I've checked in. I'm headed over to the Pentagon. I have a 9:30 appointment in the Pentagon to in process, and I'm running across South Parking, and I'm late. I've never been late for a military appointment in my life.
Wow.
And as I look up, I watch the airplane hit the Pentagon.
You literally saw that happen.
So I was in South Parking, watched it hit the building. I watched the building blow up, and the fighter pilot part of me went, that's not a good direction to go. So I went back out to Andrews. Now, the irony here was my job at that time that I got hired to come into was to be the functional manager for Air National Guard fighter units. And in my interview, a couple months prior to taking the job, was a discussion about taking down all the air defense fighter units and converting them to general purpose units. So we're going to get out of the air defense business. The Cold War was over. We are done with air defense in the United States. And obviously I never took anything down. In fact, we built it the other way. But you go through that, and I remember that night just looking at the Pentagon on fire, the smoke going down the river, and going, the world had changed. And what I thought was going to be a short tour up to D.C., and then I was going to move my family back down to Texas, and we were going to do that, turned out to 10 years at the Pentagon, various assignments, 3 deployments over to the desert, both Iraq and Afghanistan, and a lot of time spent in combat. And all of that simply to say that what I had expected and the reasons I went, the core values of all those things remain the same, but the purpose has changed. And, a lot of people remembered 9/11. It changed their lives. A lot of people came in, which was great, and we needed that help. But I think it was this understanding of how are we going to adapt to this new world? What is this going to look like? And then the fateful day for me really came in 2009. So part of my job, I had orders for a new assignment. We were going to leave D.C., and I go to get my orders, and when they hand me the orders of what it was supposed to be to actually come to Florida, they hand me orders and it says Baghdad, Iraq. And I went, that's not the beach I'm supposed to be going to.
Right.
And so I go to Iraq. Part of my job at that point is the president had said we're going to pull out of Iraq. So it's how do we get all the troops? So I had to go to all the locations, about 400 different locations. Was part of a team that was negotiating us. What are we going to leave behind? Where's all the stuff? How do we get it out of the country and bring everything home? And so I was headed up north out of Baghdad to go meet some tribal leaders to have a negotiation with them. And riding in the back of an MRAP, went over what they estimate was probably about 1,000-pound IED, flipped the MRAP, which, if you know how big and heavy an MRAP is, takes a lot to do. Killed our gunner, firefight that was going on in that time frame. We get ourselves out of that situation. We recover what we have to do. Ended up in that, had to shoot a couple guys. We get through all of that, come back home, and I'm trying to talk to the guys about what had happened. And what was interesting at that moment to me, too, was the fact that they wanted to go back and play video games because they wanted to control their world. This is the first time that for many of them, they'd seen death, they'd been in a firefight, and it was really, really hard. And it just really struck home for me in that moment about this understanding of resilience and, what we ask. I often say the words this way, we train the world's best military to be the greatest warfighters in the world. But I think we do a pretty poor job of trying to take those war fighters and turn them back into ordinary citizens. It's a hard thing. Well, what I didn't realize at the time, and this didn't happen until I ended up coming back from that assignment, and we make a strategic decision as a family to retire. And it wasn't until years later when I started having some serious back problems, went in for a check, did an MRI on my back, found out that my back was broken, but that wasn't the bad part. What had happened was they clipped up enough into my cervical to figure out that they send me back, and I actually have a broken neck.
Oh my God. So how long was it broken for?
So I had walked around with a broken neck and a broken back for probably 4 years.
How did you even do that?
It's force of will. And I was very active at the time. So I was mountain biking. I was doing all kinds of crazy things still, and just managing the pain and managing the hurt. And so I come out of that really. So I walk in to see the surgeon for the update, and doesn't even say hi. He just looks at me and he goes, "Okay, your surgery is on Wednesday. Here's what I have to do." And I had presumed it was an age thing. I started losing feeling in my arms and legs, and was starting to lose a little bit of control, and just attributed it to age. And no, I was going to be paralyzed from the neck down.
Oh, wow. So that was like the early stages of losing that movement.
Those were the signs that I had completely missed. That all this stuff had happened.
Onset.
It was. Well, and you go back to the injury, adrenaline's an amazing thing. And what I just simply attributed to, that hurt. It just took a long time to get over.
What was exactly the injury in the moment?
So inside, I did what you're not supposed to do, which is just simply the fact is the vehicle flips.
Okay.
So it was blown into the air, and was not strapped down as tight as I should have been. So I got pretty much jammed around inside.
Just ragdolled, and as this thing's flying
and I'm still fully kitted out at the time. So you're wearing 100 pounds of stuff on top of everything else, and it was just getting flipped around inside the vehicle. As I said, it was an unrecognizable vehicle when we got done. Thank goodness that the vehicle did its job. But what I just attributed to, I had my bell rung, and like I said, we were in a firefight. There wasn't time to go like, okay, I'm not bleeding. Let's go. I got a team to take care of here. And then you just keep going on with your job. You don't stop to consider, maybe I should have some of those things checked out. So you just kit up and go back to work.
Right.
That was the mission. And, so fast forward through the journey, and one of the things about that I now call my gift, and this will get to some of the resilient stuff later, but it's the gift was migraines. And so when they replaced 4 vertebrae in my neck, but they nicked my spine when they did it.
Oh, no.
And it's part of it. It's part of the risk. So I wake up every day in chronic pain. Migraines are a regular part of my world. And, and I tell people, they go like, well, why do you call it a gift? It seems pretty horrible. You're walking around in pain. You don't seem at all like that's happening. And I go, but you have to understand, I wake up every morning. First off, I take a breath, and that I steal from God because you can't pay it back. And I go, I'm still alive, and I'm still here. And I got a lot of buddies that I can't say that about. Who are, wives waking up in empty beds. And so I'm grateful for the fact I still have my family. I can still stand. I can still operate. I can do my job. I can do the things that I'm still passionate about. I can still work to defend our nation. And it's okay. So that's just the challenge I've been given, right? And it goes back to, we talked about bump the lamp, because I get to. Right? The bump the lamp is, I can either wake up today and focus on the fact that I hurt and it's bad, or I can focus on the fact that I've been given a second opportunity to go do good things. And there's a lot of people I still feel like I owe, who gave a huge sacrifice to me to get to keep doing what I do. And so mine is to make sure that we never forget that sacrifice, the value of who those people are.
Right.
So, and by the way, I really have to share this, because a lot of people go like, well, you're just kind of papering over the pain and all of that. Your pain must not be that bad. No, the pain's pretty horrific. I have a pain management coach. I have therapists that I go to. I talk to a lot of people. I've got great mentors. Like I said before, I'm married really well. I've got a team that surrounds me, that keeps me going. Because if this was purely on me, we wouldn't be here. We would not be having this conversation if it was solely upon me.
Right.
And it's building that team of supporters, and then the gift of me being able to pour that back into people.
Absolutely.
That is what's important.
I've the same. I've developed the same outlook. I didn't always have a positive outlook, but when I told you a little bit earlier that I had that really hard time, and during that time I had a really poor outlook on myself, on my future. Started getting really isolated, but I try to really think about when my perception changed. Like, what was that moment? For me, it was accepting help. So I had two friends that were relentless that I work with. I used to be aerospace ground equipment age. As a pilot, you've probably seen all the age equipment.
Absolutely. Can't do the mission without you.
Right, exactly. So that was the shop I was in. And there was these two airmen that were relentless on not letting me isolate. No, come on, come out. You want to do this, do that. Finally, they just showed up and pulled me out. And I started hanging out with them. That's truly when I started getting better. It was when I accepted their help. And I had this friendship. I was doing new things, and I started building that village around me. Yeah. Because, like you said, if it's just you, it's a whole lot harder, right?
Yep, absolutely. So I want to tell you a quick story about that relates to that. So I mentioned it as a gift. One of the things that comes of chasing migraines for all of our friends who suffer migraines out there, right, is medication, Botox, all kinds of things. So they're trying to help me control that. They put me on some drugs, and you know how in every commercial there's that guy at the end who reads all the nasty side effects that make you supposedly be scared that you shouldn't take that drug.
Right.
So some of those were depression and suicidal ideation.
Oh no.
And there was a morning, a lot of pain, was not a good time. A lot went on, and then one of my battle buddies took his life. And in that season, those were the voices in my head. Jeez. It was really dark. And I knew those were not my voices. But as you know, if you ever fight depression, it's a spiral that just keeps getting deeper and darker. And at a certain point, that thing called hope goes away.
Right.
You may notice that on here I have a semicolon.
I did notice
on my wrist. Now, when you see somebody with one of those on their wrist, that means that's somebody who's probably walked either through suicidal ideation, attempted suicide, or was walking along somebody who's been there. And I've been in all of those places, so I've walked with a lot of people. And people get weirded out. They go like, "Wait a minute, you have a suicide story. You're the guy who's the executive director guy. Wait, how can that be?" And I go, because I go get help. I have this great team. I have counselors who help me. And you go like, well, why a semicolon? Well, a semicolon's used when a sentence could have ended and the author chose to continue the story.
I love that.
And every single day, right, I get a choice. When things are hard, I look down at that wrist. One, I do it because I want you to ask me the question, why do you have that on your wrist? Because the thing I'm going to ask you is, Josh, tell me your story.
Right.
Because I know you have a story like mine somewhere, and I need to hear your story. I'm going to be that guy that wants to pull you out of that, because we have such a stigma still about our mental conditions and the things that we go through that we think we can't have that conversation. And I'm here to demystify that. We can have that same conversation about sports, or I can talk to you about the things that hurt ourselves and how we're going to get better about it. But if I don't have the conversation, we're never going to get better. So it's how do we pull that out, right? And the other thing here is, because I want to make sure that people know and understand that this is not something that should be, and I'm going to say the end of your life, because it's, while that seems somewhat of a pun, what I'm saying is we think that I can't have that thought. And I go, I've had those thoughts. And I know most people will never want to ever admit it, because we feel like if I tell you I had that thought, that somehow now I'm broken. I go, well, I already admit that I'm broken. I already know that I am.
Right.
I already know that I've been through all that other stuff. I'm not here to prove to you that I'm something that I'm not. I'm here to tell you that I've been through these things. I know what that looks like. I've seen the hard stuff. I've lost loved ones and friends and battle buddies, right? And so to walk around and go like, yeah, it doesn't matter, or that it doesn't count,
Right.
That's not even a thing I want to ever have that conversation about. So
I'm the same way. I mean, that's why I do this.
Yeah.
And you know what you're doing is you're restoring people's hope when you do that, when you share that.
Yeah.
Right. Remember we said, you start to lose that hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you can, we're visual people, right? Like we're very drawn to anything visual, and to visually see a leader who's been through that, who's in your position now, how could that not give you hope?
Well, I appreciate that. Let me, if I can, I want to give you 3 quick things that I give to everybody here. And the first, these are 3 philosophies that I live by. And I give this talk quite a bit, but I want to share the first one with you. So 3 things. It's value, purpose, and perspective. Value, purpose, and perspective. Okay, so here's the first one. All right, I got a $50 bill right in front of me. If I say, Josh, I want to give you this 50, would you be interested in me handing you a 50?
I mean, obviously.
Obviously, okay. So now I have crumpled it up.
Oh no!
Would you still like to have it?
I mean, yeah, it's still that's salvageable.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to throw it on the ground. I'm going to stomp on it, and I'm going to tear it up, tear the corners off of that. Would you still want it?
I feel like I could still make that work.
Yeah, and why?
It's still it's salvageable. It's not so damaged. It's still $50.
It's still valuable.
Still valuable.
See, and the problem most of us have is we equate our conditions and our circumstances with our value. And we think that the condition that I'm in today or the situation that I'm in today equates to the value of who I am as a person. You are valuable because God says you're valuable. You are valuable as a person because you are inherently valuable. And it doesn't matter what your condition or your circumstances are, you have value. It doesn't matter the condition of this thing that I've crumpled it up and I've stood on it and I've done all this thing because it still has value.
Absolutely.
And you have value. The second one is purpose. Every morning when we wake up, I told you, I count a breath and I go like, okay, my purpose today is I'm going to advance the cause. I'm going to do something that's bigger than myself. I'm going to bump the lamp because that's what I'm called to do. And so it's that I'm doing something bigger than myself, not because I want the recognition. I don't really care. A long time ago, people started talking about titles and ranks. I got over that a long way ago, right? What's on my business card, somebody asked me what my title is, I'll often tell them I'm the janitor because all I do is clean up messes. And
I love that.
Because it doesn't matter what my title is, right?
Yeah.
I have a role to play, you have a role to play, right? But we have a much bigger purpose. And people, what's the purpose? The purpose is what we're doing right now. It's having this conversation. It's giving people hope. It's helping people see that they're much more valuable than they really think that they are, right? So value and purpose. Got to have a purpose, and we know we have value. The last one's perspective. Perspective sounds like this. Most people in the world have a perspective that's either what I call a ceiling perspective or a floor perspective. Now, a ceiling perspective is from the ceiling in the room, what I have expectation is that the world's going to rise up and meet my expectations. It's going to fill the room with all the good and the happy things, and it's all going to rise up and meet me up at the ceiling because I'm owed that. That's my perspective. The problem with that perspective is if I live that way, I live constantly disappointed.
Constantly.
Because the expectations and the things, I'm never going to be satisfied because it's never going to get there.
Right.
And if I live always with an expectation that it has to rise up and I'm owed something, right, that all of that has to come up to me, I am never, ever going to get happy.
Wow.
But if I live on the floor perspective, that when I wake up, good or bad, whatever comes into my life is intentionally there to make me better, then everything else is a bonus.
Right.
Because when I started out the day, I didn't expect that you and I would have this kind of a conversation. So this is a bonus to me, right? We're getting to share, we get to know each other, we get to connect on a level we probably didn't expect we would, and yet that's bonus. I didn't know that when I started my day.
Right.
So that's amazing. The extra, right? So that's so it's value, it's purpose, and it's perspective.
Wow. I absolutely love that. And your perspective, the way you choose to see life, the way you're thankful. First of all, I'm pretty proud of myself because I guessed a lot of that.
You did a great job. It was awesome. But, no one's ever done that, by the way, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely, sir. But yeah, your optimism is inspiring because you've gone through so much. and you're not just still here showing up, which is tremendous on its own, but you're now taking care of us too.
That's what I want to do.
And I mean, that is just incredible. And what had me, ask you to come on here wasn't just my interaction with you the other day. It was going to a few of your speeches. You're always at the events. Like if there's a speaker, if there's an event, I've always seen you there. And a few of those times, your speeches, it brought you to tears. And, I thought that was just a beautiful thing, that your empathy to the cause, to whatever is being discussed, touched you that much. Yeah. And I just thought that was so incredible. And I knew I had to talk to you one day. That. Yes, sir. So I was hoping, and I want to respect your exec and not keep you here past your scheduled time. So we have a little bit, about 5 minutes left. And I was hoping you could kind of explain how all that, everything we just talked about is how you lead today.
So if you start out with this understanding that everybody has value, then I want to enter into the engagement that says that I'm going to respect that value from the outset. There's an old joke that says, everybody brings joy into my life, some when entering, others when leaving. And I want to always think about this idea that I get an encounter with you, and what if that's the only encounter I have?
Right.
You talked about impressions, and it's not that I'm trying to impress anybody. I'm not here. I had to get past performance. We have been trained since the earliest of days to be performance-oriented. As military members, you get a report written. As a civilian member, you get a report written, right? We're always about performance in the next rank. And performance is important, but if I'm just chasing performance, then again, it gets really hard. It builds anxiety. It builds all these things, because my perception of my performance is I'm never measuring up.
You're kind of handing that over.
Yeah. And so when we gather and when we come into the room, right, what I have to figure out is, what is it of this person that has value? They're coming in. You'll see on my desk there's a monkey. And that monkey sits there because there's a book that's called Whose Monkey Is It? And it's this idea that people want to come in and hand me their monkey.
Oh, right.
Right?
I think I have heard that.
They got a monkey on their back, and their whole goal in coming in to talk to me is their goal is to give me their monkey. Yes. My goal is to make them see how to take care of that monkey.
Right.
Right. And that they have the ability to solve that themselves. Absolutely. Now, maybe they need my help. Maybe I need to go take a target down for them or go talk to somebody, right? Mm-hmm. They can't get it pushed to a high enough level to get it fixed. That's what I'm here for. But it's this idea that they're coming in here not because they work for me, but because I have the opportunity to help them become better at what they're doing, right? That's how this all comes back together. It's in the interactions of respect for each other that people have value.
Right.
And I get to make a choice every day about what that value perspective looks like. Now, you say, does that get tiring? Sure. Do I finish the day sometimes exhausted? Because it takes, peopling is energy time consuming. It really is. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what a privilege.
Right.
Like if I get to have that encounter, I'll go back to one last story. I mentioned to you about one of my battle buddies took his life. This is a guy that when he called, I would show up. And I couldn't show up for the one where he took his life.
Right.
Right? And
that's tough. That's tough.
And so you have to look at that and go, and there's a motivation in there to go like, I get one shot at this maybe to have an interaction. And if my goal is I can make your day a little bit better as we're doing what are really, really hard things that we deal with here. We don't get any easy problems at all. But if we can find a way together to make this better at what we're doing, whether that's the mission, whether that's our lives, whether it's the people we interact with, whether it's your family, then, how great is that? What a privilege it is that I get to be a part of that. That's what drives me every day.
That's absolutely beautiful. I love your perspective. I love how you see the world. It has you, just to show up time and time again is hard. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've not shown up and I wanted to hide and bury my head somewhere. Yeah. Just the act of showing up is such a tremendous accomplishment on its own. And the fact that you have taken that a step farther and brought us along with you and kind of embraced us, I just want to personally thank you for being this shining example of, although life is hard and it doesn't always go the way you wanted, I also almost lost, my son.
Yeah.
I know how terrifying
it is.
That night. I almost lost my son and wife in the same night.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I had an out-of-body experience, and I needed help. I truly did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did get that help. My family came out. My boss talked with me. I know the value in someone and sharing the story, in showing up. But if someone can't show up, you gotta be the one to help pull them out.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you sharing everything you did today. I know
Thank you.
Some of these stories you might not have, even shared with a lot of people in a while. Your perspective with what you value. I mean, do you carry that 50 with you everywhere?
Not everywhere. You just caught me on a good day.
Okay. I just want to thank you, sir, Mr. Marks, for being a leader who leads by example.
Thanks.
Who shows up for us, who cares about us genuinely, and you've always got our back. And I got to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on the Hero Front podcast today and sharing all that valuable wisdom. I know it wasn't easy to talk about a few of them, so thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. This was the hero's journey of Mr. Dale Marks, and we're out.